Hey, what's up guys? John here. I just watched a documentary today about robotics and AI and what the future is going to look like over the next 8 years, and learned a lot of things. And I'm going to share with you what I learned and where I think the economy is going, where jobs are going, where everything is likely going in relation to economic activity. So right now what they are saying is that it's unbelievable that there's 3.19 billion jobs in the world, and 800 million of them will be replaced in the next 7.5 to 8 years by 2030, right? That's a massive figure. And so 800 million jobs gone. And so that accounts to 25% of the entire workforce in the world is going to be either out of work or they're going to have to transition into new careers. Now, it's very fascinating paying attention to what's happening in Japan, because Japan it seems as though they are much more accepting of robotics and are welcoming it into their society, whereas in America people are much more pessimistic as to what robotics and what AI and artificial intelligence really means with work and with opportunity and one's ability to provide for themselves. And when I'm looking at this information, I'm looking at where things are headed. If we look at just the last couple of years, things are headed into the hands of large corporations, and these very large corporations are experiencing the great resignation. A lot of people are quitting their jobs, but they're also experiencing higher cost of labor, and they're paying their employees much more money to try to keep them. And we're seeing that right now. What are they essentially doing is they are pricing in the cost of their newfound labor into the goods and services that they are selling consumers. And so if they are the lowest cost provider, meaning you can't buy anything cheaper than outside of like a Walmart or an Amazon, you're going to have no choice but to pay for it. And if you can't afford it, you're going to put it on credit. And that's essentially what they're doing. They're pricing in their labor cost into the goods and services they're selling us in large part. Now, what I'm paying attention to is going to be what's going to come next. What's going to come next is that inflation is likely going to continue to get out of control, and they're likely going to continue to increase wages. And that is likely only going to feed us into a situation where they could very well be more inclined to adopt AI, robotics, technology. They're already looking at, Amazon and Walmart are already looking at drone deliveries, and they're working on this in several different markets throughout California. And Walmart's getting even more aggressive in their expansion than Amazon at this point. And so when we're looking at this information, what I'm seeing is that we are in the early stage of this, and I think that we are going to see so much change come. In Japan, for example, the automation is to the point now where robots are repairing other robots. Like, some people thought, hey, if this does in fact happen, there's going to be a ton of jobs because people are going to need to service these robots. Well, in Japan, robots are servicing robots. Am I saying that people are going to be completely out of work? No. But what I'm saying is I think we're going to see a large chunk of the population be forced to shift their careers, their talents, their skills into what is needed in this next generation. That's what's going to happen, I think, in large part. We're going to see this grow and grow and grow. Now, there's already data that's pointing to 50% of all American jobs are going to be gig work, like side hustles, by 2025, so 3.5 years. So what does this mean? To me, this means that we're going to have more people that are going to be forced to rent because they're going to have a harder time qualifying for mortgages because lenders require 2 years of stable income, right? And so this is all leading us into this, into that crazy sci-fi dystopian type movie where, it's more of a horror movie, but where people are forced to rent and they're kind of a byproduct of the system. They're just kind of dependent on the system to survive, like a universal basic income. Am I saying that's going to happen? I think it is probably going to happen, but not for everybody. I think that it's going to happen for a large chunk, but I don't think it's going to happen for everybody. Like, the point of me sharing this video is because I myself am looking at, trying to learn more about robotics and tech and trying to learn more about what's going on. Since this is all foreign to me, the last, 10 years, let's say, 10 years ago, I was not thinking anything about robotics. 5 years ago, I really wasn't thinking much about it. Last year, I started thinking more about it. And now I'm thinking even more than ever before. And for me, it's making sense for me to either try to bring someone on board or try to partner with someone with more experience to teach me, to try to, maybe I either pay them or I give them some type of value exchange, but I need to learn about what's happening in society. So A, I can prepare for it, and B, I can, teach you guys what I learned. But this is what I think is ultimately going to happen. I think we're stepping into this. I think it's coming really, really fast. And I think all of these new, problems that we're seeing, all these sicknesses that they're talking about, this is only going to increase the likelihood that there's going to be more people quitting their jobs and more people afraid to go to work, or more people that require paid sick leave, or all these different things that corporations are simply not going to go for. They're going to say, you know what, I can hire a robot, I can buy it one time, or I can lease it for a few dollars an hour, and it can work 24/7. I don't have to pay health insurance. I don't have to worry about any lawsuits. I don't have to worry about any of that. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think that's going to happen in a very, very large part due to what's going on right now. And the system is designed in a way to where it's incentivizing corporations to not only gobble up market share, but to be the low-cost provider, to where they have everyone as essentially dependent on their business models simply to survive. Like, it's getting interesting. I think that we are going to see this change happen so quickly. I think a lot of people are ignoring it because it's more comfortable to ignore. But if we look at the real situation, like in Japan, for example, their workforce is declining rapidly. I think there's like 60 million or 64 million people in total in their workforce, and every year 500,000 people leave the workforce. And so as that continues to happen, they're out there, they're trying to, according to the data that I'm reading, they're paying people in Japan to have kids because the population is declining so much. Like, I think it's like $1,800 or something they pay to have a child. And so they are doing what they can to try to grow the population, whereas in America, I think it's a little bit different, because here it's almost as though they're trying to set up a divide between the employee and the employer, trying to get this, relationship batting against one another. And so as this begins to happen, what ultimately happens is that you're going to have employees that are not going to be satisfied, and you're going to have corporations that are going to be looking for alternatives. And so I think we are walking into this. I think it's going to be pretty crazy over the next 7.5 years. That's so fast. You think about it, the madness right now that we've been experiencing the last couple of years, we're approaching 3 years of this. 3 years. And so 7.5 years from now, I mean, it's not that far away, right? And it's not all going to happen in 1 year. It's going to be a gradual increase. And you're talking 25% of the world's population. You think about the amount of jobs that are going to be displaced. It's so many. Shipping and distribution is going to be one of the main ones, because they keep talking about supply chains. Shipping and distribution, logistics, transportation, all of these, Uber, all of these jobs, all these careers that they've been like American staples, are going to be displaced by automation, and it's going to be pretty wild to experience. And so that's why I think right now is like the crucial moment that people should really look first at their career and say, you know what, is this career going to be viable in the next 7 years? If the answer is no, then I personally believe that the best thing to do is probably to keep the career for the time being, but to start gathering other skills, learning, studying, putting yourself in a position to where you can pivot in the next 1 to 2 years. That's what I think is going to be crucial, being able to pivot with these times. Because what you do not want to happen is to get completely blindsided by all this stuff that's coming. Like, this is 100% going to happen, simply if you just look at the economics of it. Like, hiring, if you've tried to hire anyone over the last, let's say 18 months to 24 months, it hasn't been easy. You feel like, at least for me, I feel like I'm overpaying in most cases. I feel like a lot of people simply don't want to work, or if they do want to work, it's for a figure that almost doesn't make sense. Like, it almost does not make sense to pay them the amount of money that they are requesting, simply because they're not bringing in as much money or more money than what I'm paying them. So at that point, it doesn't really pencil. And a lot of people are now outsourcing talent overseas, and they're trying to, this is all gradually leading into the automation. When you start outsourcing and you start looking for other alternatives, this is all moving in that direction. But if wages get to, let's say inflation gets out of control the next 2 to 3 years with stimulus and all these different universal basic income programs, how much money are you going to need to actually survive, right? It might be $100 an hour, right? It might be a huge number. And if you're like, hey, I need $100 to survive per hour, and the business owner is only gaining $50 or $75, there's going to be no job there. Even if they're gaining $100.